My name's Richards Vobes, and I have a YouTube channel on a very strange platform that if you try to say things that people might want to know, they often give you a strike. I've had a couple of strikes which I now wear as a badge of honour. I'm told that if you, thank you very much, I am actually told that if you haven't had a strike, you're not actually near the knuckle enough. You've got to really push it. So I don't really feel that I'm pushing it. I'm just talking what I feel is common sense. And I think everybody else here feels a lot of the things that I've been saying, and of course a lot of the wonderful speakers who've been here this afternoon is saying a lot of common sense. And it does seem like those people who are in charge, although I don't think they're going to be in charge for much longer, don't like the common sense, because the common sense, it seems to me at this moment in time, is saying, stuff you, we've had enough. Now, the thing I really want to say, I did a video this morning. I do a video every day, a little monologue in which I come up with a nugget of something. Sometimes it's all right, sometimes it's a little bit vague, and the lovely Julia, who is with me, will often say, well, you were rambling a bit in that one, Richard. And I said, well, hopefully the point came across. The one this morning I thought actually would be quite interesting to talk to everybody here about. It seems to me that we're in a situation in which we have this government that is governing us in a very unique way these days. Not so much there as our servants to do the things that perhaps we voted them in when we voted on a manifesto, but something in which they've now decided, never mind the manifesto, we think, what will be for your benefit, of course, because we're a kind, nice, benevolent government, naturally, that you should have things like a digital ID or a 15-minute city in which you can't drive across the city more than perhaps, say, 100 times without a camera taking a photograph and then you getting a bill. And all these sort of things, the net zero policy. I'd love to know, and presumably there are millions of people who voted for a net zero. Is anybody here in favour of the net zero? I'd like to see the people who voted it in. I've got a few words to say to you. Who's voted in this net zero? Ah, there's one. It's right. I mean, isn't it very strange? Don't you find that a bit weird? I mean, if you go down the street, you ever sort of at the checkout in Sainsbury's or Tesco, not that anybody here goes to supermarkets anymore because they're selling you highly processed poison and fruit that's been in the freezer for 16 years, and the moment you get it, it's sort of got no nutrients or minerals or anything in it anyway. But if you are out and about, has anybody ask you and say, are you the one who voted for net zero? Did you vote for it? Because I don't know who has. I mean, I know a lot of people say that they believe in climate change, and I've got no problem because climate is changing. Look at now, it's just raining a second ago and remarkably it stopped. Although that's weather, of course, that's slightly different to climate. One has to be very careful how you phrase these things these days. But I don't know who's voted for any of this nonsense. So if we're living in a society, in a world, in a land, in a country, whether it's England or the Republic of England or whichever kind of country it is, why do we put up with this? Why do we put up with the people who we pay as our servants, who are supposed to do what we ask them to do, and yet they seem to feel that they're our masters? I mean, I just don't understand this sort of mentality. Why do we put up with, I mean, the rest of the people walking around. Hello, everybody else walking around in the park, not joining us. This concerns you as well. You're in this land. Why is it that we we just acquiesce, don't we? It's like that Sunak bloke who, can you imagine Sunak standing at the dispatch box if there is another pressure, and you can see it building up, you know, oh yes, a new strain of the virus is coming back, it's coming back. Mainstream media are winding up the story, ready for another trial lockdown. I'm sure it's not going to work, but you can see them trying to get it. But I can't see Sunak standing there saying, well, we're going to have to ask you all to stay in and lock down. I can't see, he hasn't got the authority, has he? He's just the most charismatic person on the planet. I mean, maybe richer than God and his wife richer than the universe, but he doesn't really have any charisma. And anything he says, you sort of just, you know, take with a pinch of salt. All this business, everyone's going to do maths up to the age of 18. It's like, well, what for? We've got calculators, haven't we? We've got AI coming. Why do we need all this technology you're rubbishly saying? So if he stands there and says, we've all got to go and stay inside, I can't see that anyone's even... I mean, he's got to have some personality, surely. I mean, Boris, we might have an opinion about Boris now, but when he was first in there and one of his first tasks was to obviously look dishevelled and an idiot and fresh from Have I Got News For You, but he had to tell us all to, in his very worried way, tell us that we had to lock down. And we kind of, you know, at first went along with it, even though we thought this is a bit stupid. What are you talking about? Lockdown? You're mad, aren't you? And then as this 3 weeks to flatten the curve turned out to be 3 years of absolute terror, we realised what a load of bollocks that was. I can't see Sunak doing that, but the thing I just struggle with is we, the people, the sovereign people of this land, we're just stupid, aren't we? We listen to these people and we go, oh right, okay, we're going to have this energy bill in which, let me just get this right, if I've got a wood-burning stove, which I have, and you don't want me to have the wood-burning stove because I don't have an electric cooker or a gas cooker or a nuclear cooker, maybe a nuclear cooker would be better, but because I don't have that, you're going to fine me or put me in prison for a year. And I'm supposed to go, oh, all right then, that sounds fine. I mean, I'm not going to, thank you very much. And I'm sure that when the first housewife who says, I'm not paying the fine because you've changed, I don't want to change my gas boiler to this heat pump thing that's going to cost an absolute fortune, or I can't afford to insulate the house, for example, to the super huge standard that you're saying because the global planet is warming up, allegedly, although the Maldives are still there and the polar bears are still having a lovely time and the Great Barrier Reef is doing fine, thanks very much. But, you know, never mind all that. We've still got to save the planet so that Klaus Schwab and his bunch of goons can get their one world government through. When the first housewife gets arrested, perhaps that's when people will start saying, actually, that's not a good idea. Or when the first 1,000 families are shoved in prison. Or when you've got a city the size of Birmingham that is actually a prison, because you're going to need a big place to put all these people who can't physically afford to pay these stupid bills that they keep saying, and are taken to court and it's just rubber stamped. Probably like the old council tax where they just do it on a big block without actually a real judge there and they just stamp you through. There you go, there's your fine. Thanks very much. Printed on council paper, not even court paper, and you just go, oh yeah, I better pay it then, hadn't I? Because this is the thing. I'm looking around at people who know everything that I'm talking about. You know this, you've been doing this longer than I have. I'm the baby of the party. I only started this journey last year, nearly a year, 10 months ago when, what was his name? Neil Oliver, lovely Neil Oliver, who by the way isn't a shill. I've heard that he's a shill. People have said that. Oh yes, Neil Oliver. I've met him and his wife Trudy. We've been in, lovely Julia and I have been in his company at the Better Way conference. I've spoken to him many times on the telephone. I'm hoping to do a live show, theatre show with him at some point in the future. We're talking. My people are talking to his people. Well, I'm talking to him, you know. That's the way it works. We're no like big things. And so we hope to do that. So he's not a shill, but he put a video on nearly a year ago saying with the fuel crisis, when it was sort of really exacerbating up, what happens if none of us pay? What would happen if none of us paid the bills? And I thought that was a great idea, and I made a video saying, is he right? 11 months later, or 10 months later, whatever it is, people are still paying the sodding bills. You know, it's all very well saying, well, what if everyone stops paying it? But we need everybody to actually stop paying that. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Richard, have you stopped paying your bill? Are you paying your council tax? And I'm here to tell you that only yesterday, where are we, early in September, nearly 9/11. There's a date for you, isn't it? 9/11. Things are happening on 9/11. You won't be able to get your cash out from the NatWest, will you? 250 quid only. And you won't be able to put any more than 250 quid in on a day. So if you're a ice cream man and you've done £251, there's £1 you can't put into the bank. Mind you, you're better off not putting it into the bank in the first place, because they'll say it's their money anyway. And then if you want to get it back out again, you'll have to go and have a third degree with the police. This is what's going on. It's mad. But anyway, the question was, have you paid your council tax? And only yesterday I realised I was a bit overdue. And yes, I do pay my council tax. And you can boo and hiss, because I don't want to. But the reason I do at the moment is purely because they could, and I believe they might, make a feature of me. Because as I have this presence, they might say, yeah, look, Richard Vobes, we've taken him to court because I'm known. However, April is coming, and I am hoping that by speaking out that we can get enough people to turn round and actually say, at the beginning of April, on the 1st of April 2024, assuming, you know, we haven't had that mass corona eruption from the sun that's supposed to wipe out all the electricity, which actually would be quite funny if we've all got EV cars and heat pumps and everything else, because then we'll have to go back to the Stone Age and use our lovely wood-burning stoves. I'll be all right then. I'll be able to take the sheet off and dust it down. But I'm hoping in April that enough of us can do it at the same time, because that will make the big statement. But more than that, we have a government, as I said at the beginning, who is giving us stuff we don't want. Here's my argument. Why do we put up with them? They've got the monopoly on governing. Why should they have the monopoly on governing? Why don't we have an alternative government? And I don't mean a two-party system in the House of Commons. I don't mean another party that's going to sort of go, well, we're going to win, you know, vote for a... Get rid of voting altogether. Let's not have voting and MPs representing us, because we've seen how that works out when they all want to sort of get together and say it's safe and effective. And no, we believe it's going to be good for you. And it's time for your booster now, isn't it? I don't believe it. I actually now come to the point where I think the Houses of Parliament, the Prime Minister's office, that corporation, that for-profit corporation that is only there to make a profit from you, has had its day. That system, in my mind, and I am a bit of a dreamer, but never mind, that system is dead. I don't think, it doesn't matter how many people you vote in, whether it's ever going to work. We need a completely different system. Now that might be going back to what they used to call anarchy, self-rule. I interviewed a chap, it's on the channel, only went out a couple of days ago, called Steve, who lived in Poland. In the late 80s, he's Polish, and in the late 80s, the government crumbled and everything went to anarchy. The government was not in existence. Now, when I say anarchy, it didn't mean that people in the streets were punching each other and looting and pillaging from everybody, and all the women were pressed down and being raped and they set fire to the chimney tops. I'm not saying that, no. People found the best way was cooperate with one another. A bloke was trying to fix his roof. Somebody says, would you like to borrow my ladder? People found that it was the best of times. They weren't paying any tax because the government wasn't around. And he said to me, this isn't not me, I'm not making this up. He was saying he lived through it. He said during that period, people just got on because it was the easiest option. to help one another. Yes, there might have been a little bit of this, that and the other going on, and of course you'd work out some rules to help people. But the government finally got itself back together again, and then they inserted martial law to make sure that everything got back down again. Well, we don't want that. But I think, looking around and talking to you people and most of the people who comment on my comments and when I've been travelling around, people just want to live. People don't want to set wars. How many here in this area has said, actually, we should have a war with Ukraine and Russia? Who asked for that? The same bloke again. Same bloke went to the same barber as me. But people don't make wars. It's the bankers that force the politicians. I mean, the bankers are the ones who make the money. We know those in the state, in that province, the square mile in the city of London, those bankers, you know, the Rockefellers and all of that lot, the Luciferians, the Satanists. I can use these terms because I'm not on YouTube, and what a relief that is. I don't have to condition my terms for once. They can only win because they get us fighting against each other. They don't realise that ruling ourselves, we could do it, but we need some basic help. We need like some rules. We don't want to throw everything away. I mean, if we're supposed to know the rule of the land, aren't we? Otherwise we end up in court. And if you look at the legislation and the acts and statutes and you print them out, if you were to sit there and go, do you know what, I better learn the law in case I drive into a bus lane one day and get photographed by a ULEZ camera and have a fine. You know, I don't want that to happen. Happened to my daughter. When she first passed her test, she drove up to Reading. She drove into a bus lane by mistake, got photographed and ended up with a fine. There was nobody about. It was just an honest mistake. That's nonsense. We shouldn't be living under a place that just fines you for making mistakes. There was no harm done. There was nobody hurt. Where's the victim? Nowhere. The victim was in fact my daughter Georgie, who drove accidentally in. Oh, blimey, I've only just passed my test. No leeway. Magistrate, straight down. Yep, fine, no problem. If you print out that legislation, it's going to be volumes. You'd never learn it, would you? How could you learn all of that? That's why you've got the solicitors. And they don't even know it. That's why they've got all these massive loads of books. Hold on a second, I'll just check. Vobes versus Regina. Oh, yes, here we go. And charge you a fortune, plus the fact they've already sworn an oath that their allegiance is with the Crown, not you anyway. So their allegiance is to still take as much money out of you as we all know. Anybody who's had a solicitor will know. Unless you happen to have one of those very rare solicitors that's actually on your side, who hasn't yet been told, no, you're working for us, mate. But if you had to, so I don't think we need any of that. Half those acts and statutes could be thrown away by a simple rule of do no harm. Do no harm. So let's say you park your car, conveyance. You drive your conveyance and you park it at the end of somebody's drive and you nip into the pub for a pint. That's a bit awkward if the person whose drive it is can't get his car out. So he's got a grievance, quite naturally. And they may argue about that. You say, well, you need some form of legislation, don't you, to cover that? Maybe there should have been a double yellow line or something there. And you say, well, what if you got those two blokes in front of 12 of their peers and said, now, okay, let's hear the grievance. So the grievance, here's the complaint. Well, I couldn't get my car out because I've got to go to work and now I can't earn a decent money and whatever it might be. Or my wife had to go and give a baby and wanted to go to the hospital to kick their in the nuts and say, I'm not coming here for whatever reason, because, you're going to kill me. But whatever reason, they wanted to get out of the thing. So they say, okay, let's hear the defence then. And that there may be a legitimate reason why the bloke parked his conveyance in front of there. I was being chased by hoodlums and they'd run out of petrol and I couldn't go anywhere else. Okay. Or I just went to the pub because I was thirsty. Whatever the reason, the 12 just men and women could listen to that and go, and make a decision. And then they could say, right, okay, well, what should we do about it? And between the lot of them, they could very easily come to a decision. Very easy. And you might not even involve money. It might just be, look, you know, this is a bit silly, isn't it? Don't do it again, you naughty boy. Or it might be that actually we need to put yellow lines at the end of people's drives, or whatever it is. I don't know, but I think that people in a clever, sophisticated, cultivated world that we are in do not need a government to be able to do all this lot for us. We can work it out ourselves. We're not imbeciles, and we're not children. We're adults. Adults can work things out. Children are the ones that rush up to the government and say, please, can I have my rights back? Please, please, I'll be good, give us our rights. You're not, I'm allowed to do that. Adults know they've got their rights. Adults, they don't need the government to tell them, they know they're sovereign people. We can work this all out. So somehow we've got to just get ourselves together, unite. Never mind all our little differences of opinions. We know the problem is, we know that the government, for example, is being lent on by the Luciferians, the Satanists, the bankers, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, all of those powers. That may be true, but ultimately it's the goons working for the government who've got to enact all those legislation. They've got to do it. But if we turn our back and say we're just not having it, thank you so much, it's been lovely, but as an experiment, it's not worked, because you become dictatorial and tyrannical, and you're not doing what we want. There's more of us, and we're the ones living, actually coming out to a park and talking and playing table tennis and having games of football and looking after the kids. We're not sitting in a stuffy House of Commons dreaming up more ways to extract money from everybody and having these big yachts in the middle of nowhere and flying in these big massive jets and then saying none of you lot can do that. We're the ones living. I don't understand. Why are we not turning our backs on them and saying, can you hear yourself? We pay you. Get it into your mind, Mr. Sunak and all your rest of you. We pay you. We're not going to pay you if you don't do what we want. So to me, government is finished. We can set up another government, if you like. Don't call it government, call it something else. I don't know what. Give it a different name. But we can set something else as an alternative and offer the people who aren't bothered to come round and listen today and say, look, you can have government, a two-tier system in which a fag paper between the two is pretty much the same. They might call themselves Labour or Conservative, but we know that they're just basically monsters in suits. You could have that system, or you could have a system that simply says, do you know what, you're free. You're free. We're not going to put cameras on you. We're not going to give you IDs, digital IDs. We're going to treat you as a human person. We're going to get rid of those big corporations that treat you like a number. We're going to invest in small, independent, family-run businesses. We're going to make sure that there's many more places you can get organic food. We're not going to give you the chance of being under the knife of the big pharma and continually on pills and horrible rubbish. We're going to make sure our food has got healthy stuff in it. We're going to make sure the schools are teaching, if you want to take your kids to schools, but maybe it's a good idea to have much smaller classes and teach them more wholesome. We don't want to sexualize children, and those people that do, we'll just lock them up. We're going to, we're going to offer people what they want. The government isn't offering us any of that. I don't know why we listen to them. We're going to go, oh, well, there's Conservative, there's Labour, there's one or t'other. There's none of them. I've had enough with them all. Bin them all. With a bit of self-rule, we can make this world a much better place. We can push back. There's more of us. So we must unite, hug each other, be kind, look after one another, support the elderly. The older people, the people who've got wisdom, who've been around, who remember the things that were great in the old days. We've thrown out the baby with the bathwater. Do you remember when you used to go in and have real personal service? You know, you go into your little shop and you'd get fork handles. You'd have proper service. People treated you. You had pounds, shillings and pence, for goodness sake. In the days when you could get local food, you could walk round the farm and see how it was being grown. You could literally pick your pig. People were healthier. You didn't have corporations where every town looks the same with the same hoardings, sodding McDonald's and Costa Coffee, and everywhere you go. You'd have small independent places that are trying new stuff. And maybe we could find those people who've got the secret patterns to free energy, so we don't have to have the conglomerates whacking up the price like they're trying to, and you can have your wood burning stove or your gas boiler or free energy machines, whatever it is. But we've got to do it. No one's coming riding in. The cavalry aren't coming. And if they are coming, great. Then that's great, but let us get it going ourselves. Let us take back responsibility. Let us not act as children and say, oh, the government or the council are going to do it. We're going to do it. You've got potholes in the road? We're going to fill them. We're going to club together and make this place a better life. Because we have to. Because if we don't, we're going off the cliff. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow the YouTube channel.